I never thought I would like a violin version of a Pitbull song, but here we are. My God. Okay. Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming back if you've been here before, or hi, welcome if you're new. My name's Mickey. I'm a therapist, and we talk about therapeutic things on this channel. And today, we're talking about Bridgerton again. We talked about all of the sex scenes, well, the relevant sex scenes from season 1 of Bridgerton last time. I thought there was more sex scenes in season 2, I'll be honest, but there's not. Other than like Anthony and Sienna fucking at the beginning, which, small potatoes. We're talking about the like big, relevant, very popular sex scenes from season 2 and also from season 3. We're gonna squish them together today because currently at the time that we are filming, part 2 of season 3 has not come out yet. So we're just gonna lump together season 2 and the beginning of season 3 so that we can be ready in preparation for when all of the good stuff drops later this month. That said, let's just get into the video. Okay, like I said, there are very few sex scenes in season 2 other than Anthony and Sienna in season 1, and like there's not really a lot for us to unpack there. This one though, this is the scene. For those of you who haven't watched Bridgerton, there has been a lot of back and forth and very tense exchanges between Anthony and Kate up to this point, and so this is like the moment, like 45 freaking minutes into episode 7, we finally get the goods. So we're gonna watch that scene right now. Okay, great, here we go.
What are you doing out here?
My apologies.
No, please. Stay.
You were here first.
I was just leaving.
It is your house, my lord.
It does not signify.
Perhaps it should.
Must you always?
You are the one insisting.
Wait, this is you compromising.
Oh, good night, my lord.
Can you ever just agree?
I want to be clear, this is a good moment for us to differentiate between fantasy and reality, because in a Regency era, not historically accurate, fantastical fantasy environment, the enemies to lovers thing, very fun, right? I think a lot of people enjoy the tension and the conflict here because it's fun to watch, and because, I mean, it's a trope as old as time for a reason. People enjoy seeing the character growth from like enemies to lovers, right? And also, I do want to be clear from a clinical perspective, speaking to your partner this way, if this is happening a lot, can very much be a sign of an issue and potentially like a destructive pattern in a relationship that ideally is going to be rectified. Sometimes couples therapy is a great resource for folks in that regard. Obviously, that's not accessible to all folks, so there's lots of resources in regards to like, you know, improving our communication and our emotional capacity to withstand and endure conflict with our partner. So for what it's worth, if you find yourself in this pattern a lot in your relationship or relationships, potentially worth doing some work around.
You have been like this from the moment we first met in those woods. Obstinate, inflexible, unyielding to good, plain, common sense.
Well, I can certainly understand why that would be so troubling for a man like you. A man used to always getting his way.
Really quick, unrelated. The look of shock on his face is something that I live for. Like, I would... Let's rewind. Let's rewind and watch it again, shall we? Let's just watch the look of shock on his face.
Well, I can certainly understand why that would be so troubling for a man like you. A man used to always getting his way. A man used to giving orders without any... You give me orders and you expect me to listen. I do not listen.
Well, perhaps you should.
Oh, I shall never listen to you or to anyone I wholeheartedly disagree with. The fact it has taken you this long to come to terms with that, to accept that fact. I am uncertain you even know why.
I know why.
Oh, here we go. Enthrall me with your self-knowledge and awareness.
It is because I've never met anyone like you.
Again, to be clear, the way that we're speaking to each other, like really there's a lot of conflict and resentment here. Generally speaking, I want to encourage people to resolve that. And also, there is something to be said for the dynamic of like not having a clear, especially from a like cis heteronormative perspective, not having a clear like dominant or submissive or top or bottom kind of, well, you get it. It's refreshing, I think, and not uncommon for people to have a greater sense of flexibility with where they land in terms of like power and like a sort of de facto like leader in a relationship. I want to be super clear. Obviously, the heteronormative roles that have been assigned, like men are the leaders and women are the followers, are problematic and don't resonate with the vast majority of people for obvious reasons. And also, it is refreshing to see a representation of a couple. It almost reminds me of like in grad school when they educate you about like groups forming and things like that. There's like the forming and the storming phase. This kind of reminds me of that in a weird way, where we're sort of like haphazardly and chaotically figuring out like where do we land and who gets to say what and who gets to be in charge and who's like leading versus following in this moment. And there is something to be said about a partner who is able to effectively engage with you when you're sort of doing this like headbutting thing. And like as a person who tends to be pretty outspoken and like pretty vocal about my lack lack of interest in following people around, it's refreshing to see some representation of a couple who can sort of go toe-to-toe with one another and, like, ideally at the end of the day in a healthy world, see some good conflict resolution around that while still, like, honoring that, like, she gets to be headstrong, she gets to be loud, she gets to be vocal, and that that's okay and, like, encouraged even in this dynamic, especially because, like, whatever, it doesn't matter, let's keep going.
It is maddening how much you consume my very being. My family is on the brink of ruin. I am nearly certain every last one of my brothers and sisters secretly despise me. My own mother at that, despite the fact I've lived the better part of my life for them. And yet still, all I find myself thinking about, all I find myself being able to breathe for is you. Do you think that I want to be in this position? Contending with these thoughts of wanting to be nowhere except with you. Wanting to run away with you. Of acting on the most impure, forbidden desires, no matter how much I must remind myself. I am a gentleman, and you are a lady of that scent that has remained imprinted on my mind ever since the night of the conservatory ball on that terrace.
Quick break for realism. I do want to encourage people to remember that, yes, this is fun and sexy and saucy in a fantasy environment. And also, generally speaking, the expectation that we will have this like deep, burning, yearning passion in all of our sexual encounters is unrealistic. And it is also very possible to grow passion and intrigue and intensity in regards to our romantic or sexual or intimate relationships over time. Please know that, like, especially for those of us who have been partnered for a long time, not having this, like, I'm going to burn my clothes off of my body, I'm so attracted to you type of intensity all the time does not mean that your relationship is dead. It does not mean that you don't love each other. Maintaining this level of intensity over time or not experiencing this intensity right off the bat does not mean that you're not sexually compatible. It does not mean that you don't have sexual chemistry. It is just important to honor that, like, especially in a world where things like insecurities and fears and misogyny and the expectation and then, like, the preconceived notions around sex and intimacy and bodies, where all of those things exist, there's going to be trepidation and, like, herky-jerkiness, right? I've talked ad nauseum on the channel about how I think we should really normalize awkward silence and funny noises and bodies doing silly and weird things during sex, because it's real and it's true and it's important. And while, yes, this is, like, again, saucy and fun and sexy, it is also important to acknowledge and honor the validity and the realness of sex looking a whole bunch of different ways besides this. Okay, before we go any further, I want to talk to you about this week's sponsor, which is Beducated. I'm delighted to work with Beducated again because, if you don't know, Beducated is an online platform that is dedicated to all things sex and relationship learning. My favorite thing about Beducated, though, is that the information that they have in their over 100 courses on the platform comes from industry experts who are giving fact-based information that is reliable and trustworthy, and we all know that I love reliable and trustworthy information here. One of the things that I love most about Beducated is their focus on being inclusive, and I have recently been revisiting a course about plus-sized confidence in regards to sex and intimacy, which I really enjoy. I think people don't talk enough about how life-changing and beautiful plus-size people are, and so it's nice to see a platform prioritize, again, fact-based and reliable information that is also uplifting and validating of people who have bodies that look like mine. Which is my other favorite thing about Beducated, which is that their video tutorials and exercises are explicit and specific without being pornographic. The thing that is a hard line to walk in this niche is providing people with real and specific information that you can actually understand what you're supposed to be doing with a particular exercise without it feeling objectifying, and I think Beducated really nails that balance. So if you want to get started with Beducated, go click the link in the description. You can get 50% off of an annual pass if you use my code Mickey Atkins. Beducated also has a 14-day money-back guarantee and a 24-hour free trial, so you can test it out and see how you feel about it, and if you don't like it, you don't have to stay, but I think you'll probably like it. So go click that link in the description and show Beducated some love for showing me some love. Thank you again, Beducated, for sponsoring this week's video. Let's go ahead and hop back in. Also, I do love this exchange, but if someone sniffed me, I'm out. I gotta go.
You have to stop.
I have to stop.
There is no other course of action to be concluded. You must stop.
It has been you. It has been you this entire time, spinning my world off its axis, making me reconsider everything I've ever told myself. I came here resolved to save my family. Everything I have ever done
Has it been for them?
No wonder they relate to each other.
You are the one who must stop.
I love them.
You are the one who must stop.
Before what? Before we both finally do something for ourselves?
The parentified eldest daughter in me is like, oh my God.
Please go inside.
Neither of them want to go inside.
Go inside.
Go inside, sir.
What did I tell you about you and your orders?
I don't know if I want to be Kate or be with Kate. Yay! Good for them. Want to take a moment to clarify that this moment of like, stop, don't want to stop, IRL, we very much need to have a conversation about clear consent, especially if there is indecision. Give people space, right? I am the first one to like applaud and celebrate passion and intensity and fun and spontaneity in regards to relationships and sex and intimacy and all of the things. And also, the truth is that consent is a necessary foundational piece of a healthy sex life and like any sexual encounter. And so if there is a moment, obviously none of us are living like this, but if there is ever a moment where there is like an indecision or a hesitation, do be mindful of this. If you're the person who's hesitating, please know that you are always allowed to be like, stop, wait, give me a minute, right? And to walk away, to take your time. You are never being a bummer or a wet blanket or whatever, and needing to take that time for yourself. We talked about this in the last episode, but it is worth repeating. Just because we've encountered to any level of physical, sexual intimacy or connectedness does not mean that you consent to everything thereafter de facto, right? Consent is an ongoing conversation that includes regular check-ins, that includes reading verbal and nonverbal cues, that includes a greater conversation and like also like a care and compassion for somebody's like genuine enthusiasm and interest, right? There's been a lot of evolution in regards to the conversation about consent, not just being about saying yes, but about a genuine, enthusiastic and serious, like continued engagement. And so like, this is just, again, a PSA to say that like that's necessary, that's foundational. And also, again, it is not a thing that has to feel herky-jerky. It is entirely possible through time and repetition and practice to incorporate this in all of your sexual encounters in a way that feels authentic to you and your vernacular, and also like rolls off the tongue easily and doesn't feel like we're hosting a board meeting before we get in each other's pants. Like that's very valid and real and possible. Again, if I had to wear all of this underwear, like I'm never putting it back on. I don't even want to put shorts on half the time in my own home. Having sex with a crown on does sound fun though. Makes me laugh to no end that the hair in Bridgerton, just all of a sudden her hair's down and it looks perfect, even though it was in a bun 5 seconds ago and there's probably 5 pounds of hairpins in it. Another nice reminder that sex on TV is for entertainment and not for replication in real life. This is another nice moment for us to take a second to talk about oral and foreplay and sex that doesn't include penetration, because first and foremost, I think at the time that this is going up, it is regrettably not Pride Month anymore. However, in being a consistent and loud and aggressive queer person, I want to be clear that sex is sex, regardless of whether penetration is involved by a real or simulated penis. And this cultural expectation that we have that sex must include penetration in order to be real sex is gross. It's shitty. It's also exclusionary and not true. The reality is that sex looks however we want it to look, right? Sex can include a variety of different acts and behaviors and interactions and things that don't necessarily have to be exclusive to penetration, nor do they have to include any particular makeup of genitals or body parts or any type of behaviors and things, right? Sex is a mutual decision that's either made between 2 or more consenting partners, but sex also includes having sex with yourself, right? So in the realm of subverting that narrative, I just think it's important to be clear about that. And also, we talked about this in the last video, but foreplay and anticipation building and like building tension and all of these things are a wonderful way to improve a feeling of connection in a relationship. And they're also a great way to improve the odds that we'll experience a greater amount of pleasure during a sexual interaction. So please know that even if we have unlearned the idea that sex must include penetration, oftentimes we will find ourselves feeling drawn to hurry up and get to the stuff that is like most interesting or most pleasurable, or the thing that we want to do the most. This is just a PSA to say that, especially if you are struggling with a feeling of staleness, or if you're feeling nervous in engaging in intimate or like sexual or physical pursuits with a new partner, that slowly exploring each other and exploring what pleasure looks like to each other is a great way to deal with nerves, to build connection, to relight passion and fire and interest and all of these things. So I guess this is just a PSA to remind yourself and your partner or partners that going slow and starting slowly and like kindly, gently, with a curiosity, exploring each other's bodies and sensualities and interests is a great thing to incorporate into any sexual or intimate practice, also regardless of whether it's with ourselves or someone else. Love that Anthony just wakes up alone. What a queen. Kate just left him out there by himself. Okay, I know we just talked about Anthony and Kate, but we're going to talk about one more scene with them because I think it's important. So let's watch this real quick. The dog outside the door is entirely too real. The hands. Told you. A lot of hands in this show. First and foremost, I do think that it's helpful to destigmatize and just make the conversation, I don't know, more out there, that asking for or enjoying oral sex on behalf of a male partner is something that should not be as much of a luxury as it is. I also want to address the anxiety and the fear that can come up for a lot of folks who have vulvas around this issue, because the fear, especially like for those of us who grew up in, you know, a world where like the expectation is that you would be douching on a regular basis, for example. Don't do that, by the way. Talk to your gynecologist about your vaginal health. It's very important. And also the truth is that all of these products, Summer's Eve and these like washes and wipes and all of these things that are designed to make a vulva not smell like a vulva, ? Can do all types of terrible things to your vaginal pH and to your body's natural like flora. I think it's flora. I always get those words mixed up. Doesn't matter. Do be aware that this expectation that a vulva is supposed to smell like an island breeze or a garden of roses is stupid. It's literally a it's that too. A product of misogyny, and that's also not realistic. The truth is that vulvas smell like vulvas, right? Obviously, if we're aware of a new or different odor, if we're aware of noteworthy changes to our discharge, it's very important that you speak to a health professional about that. And also, please know that for folks who are grown and have a mature and adult understanding of intimacy and sex and are not doing their learning exclusively from places like pornography, for example, it is a very realistic and understood expectation that vulvas will have a varying smell and or varying types of smells and tastes and textures. No two vulvas look the same or smell the same or taste the same. And for folks who are familiar with this and again, who have an adult understanding of sex and intimacy, this is not a thing that we should be stigmatizing or be afraid of, right? It is totally valid and human and normal for someone to say, hey, you know what, at this particular moment, maybe don't say it exactly like this, but hey, at this particular moment in your cycle, I'm not really loving being down there, and so we're going to do some other activities instead. That's totally allowed and okay. And also, again, I just want to encourage people to remember that your obligation in a sexual encounter is not to alter the very chemistry of your body to avoid it smelling or tasting like the thing that it in fact is. Okay, let's keep going.
Ignore them.
I cannot.
Valid.
Trust me. What's happening out there cannot be as important as what's happening down here. Making it.
You do know that what we are doing is not how one makes an error.
Couple of things. First and foremost, if you are a person who lives with roommates or in an intergenerational household or lives with family or friends or whoever, right? This is a very real issue that can come up for folks a lot of times. And I wanted to talk about this specifically because there are a variety of means that we can utilize to make sexual encounters feel more intimate and feel more private. I'm a big fan of incorporating accessibility components of all types into sexual encounters if that's like relevant or necessary. I've talked about this in regards to ADHD. I will put that video up here. Things like extra sound, even if that includes like headphones or even just like earplugs or things like that, can go a long way in helping to improve the likelihood that we'll be less distracted by things, that we'll be less likely to notice extraneous sounds or people or things like that. Obviously, in an ideal world, we're exercising a respect for other people's privacy and their attention and not being like disruptive of like our family or our roommates' lives by being like loud and boisterous in a room while they're watching TV, right? And also the reality is that for a lot of folks, having unfettered access to privacy for sex all the time is just simply not realistic. So I think it's helpful to get creative and to be realistic about what our, circumstances are, right? So if that means incorporating music or headphones or earplugs, blindfolds, all of these types of things can help to create a heightened sensory experience physically, and again, can help to increase the odds so that we'll be less distracted or feel less perceived by these things. And especially if that means creating a privacy by incorporating sound, by turning on the TV in the living room really loud so that folks are less likely to hear what's happening in the bedroom. All of that is very valid and okay. And again, I think it's just important to acknowledge that, like, yes, while ideally we're respecting people's privacy and respecting other people's space and sound, that's not always a realistic expectation. And so incorporate whatever means are useful or accessible to you in order to achieve that goal. Okay, before we talk about this scene, some quick context. Both of these women are recently married and trying to produce an heir. And so their mom is, Lady Featherington, is asking them somewhat intrusive questions, to be fair, about their activities with their husbands. So,
what about you? Did you two... We began. I simply...
Two things. First of all, we're going to talk in more detail about this in a second, but if you as a parent struggle with awkwardness around the like birds and the bees conversations with your kids, please know that this is very valid. It's very human. It's awkward, right? It's a strange thing to have to educate your kids about because it just feels like a thing that we shouldn't talk about for good reason. And also, the role of a parent is to educate their children and to provide them with fact-based information. And so even the opening of this conversation being, did you two... Girl, what? Did they do a puzzle together? Did they go on a horse ride together? What are you talking about? Say the words. It's also, for what it's worth, especially for those of you who have young children and you're in the beginning process of educating kids about bodies and consent and autonomy and all of these things, incorporating like fact-based medical language from the beginning will go a long way in destigmatizing this conversation when kids are teenagers or preteens, which for what it's worth, the conversation about sex ed does not happen when kids are 15, 16, 17. Ideally, it should start happening when they're toddlers by educating them about the scientific names for their body parts and about the concept of consent, right? Nobody should be having conversations with toddlers about sex. And we should be having conversations with small children about their body parts, about consent, about secrets. Especially, this is a really important way that we can prevent kids from encountering, or at least help to prevent kids from encountering harm and abuse and things like that. So destigmatizing that language, being clear that like, this is a vulva, that is a penis, those are testes. This is a great way to destigmatize that conversation, and it will make it a lot easier for you to talk about sex ed and relationships and all those things when your kids are older.
I do not enjoy it.
A woman's pleasure is somewhat more subtle than a man's. You see, when he inserts himself...
Inserts himself? Inserts himself where?
Girl.
What on earth do you and Mr. Finch do?
We kiss, and then he makes an odd sound, and then he goes to change his breeches.
His breeches remain on.
Couple of things. Besides the fact that this is hilarious. Granted, again, this is not technically a sex scene, but we're going to talk about it anyways because I think it's important. We talked in the last video about the importance of it, like empowerment and like fact-based education, which again is why I will endlessly recommend Vegucated on this channel for those of us who missed out on this education in our formative years. It's never too late to educate yourself about it and to seek out that reliable information. There's no shame in that because sometimes parents do this where they don't properly educate us, and so having a resource like Vegucated is really valuable. But in this conversation, couple of things. First of all, I can never remember the other sister's name. I remember Philippa's name. I don't remember the other one. Prudence expressing that she simply does not like having sex with her husband is like, in my mind, kind of sad, honestly. I think this is, for what it's worth, this is like, you know, kind of a byproduct of like the thing being loosely based in the Regency era. So like, fair enough. And also, we should very much be educating kids or young adults, I suppose, people who want to engage in sex, which to be clear, not everyone has an interest or desire to do that. And that's also very valid. To be fair, I don't think that's what this is reflective of. To me, it seems like this is more reflective of a lack of education again. And so this is why it's important that like comprehensive sex education doesn't just include conversations about menstruation or about like literal body parts, but also includes conversations about consent, about relationships, about pleasure in regards to sex and intimacy. And so this like statement of like, well, you know, like women's pleasure is a little bit more subtle than a man's. Like, no, it doesn't have to be. Actually, for what it's worth, we have really interesting science to validate that the orgasm that's experienced by folks with vaginas can actually be quite intense and sometimes more intense than folks who have penises, especially because it is possible for some folks with vaginas to orgasm repeatedly. And that muscle contraction can be like pretty overwhelming for folks. And so this party line of like, women's pleasure is more subtle, like, no, it's not. No, it's not. And telling people to settle for less or to just expect that they won't enjoy sex sucks. This is a take that should die with the Regency era, in my opinion. On top of that, Philippa saying inserts himself where? Very much a byproduct of us not educating people about what sex actually is. This came up in season 1 where Daphne literally did not know how children were made and had to ask a maid, like, how exactly do you make a baby? She had no concept that like semen was supposed to be introduced into the equation in order for a baby to be made. And so again, this is my endless PSA to please educate your kids, your friends, your loved ones, your whoever about fact-based sex education, and also to exercise your civil liberties, to put people in positions of power so as to protect things like comprehensive sex education and access to contraception and access to fact-based information about our bodies and consent and pleasure and relationships and all of the things.
Cool. course.
Why must I be punished over and over?
Well, probably because you don't educate your children. That's probably why. You get it. Let's move on to the next scene. Okay, this is the big one. We're talking about the carriage scene. This is a somewhat long scene, but I do want to talk through the whole thing because I think the dialogue is necessary. So let's just get into this scene. Sorry, real quick for context, in case you didn't watch the show. Penelope is sort of, they call her an insipid wallflower. She's not particularly out and about in social events, and she's also not commonly sought after by male suitors and things like that. They call her a spinster in this season. So she's often sort of forgotten and like not really paid attention to by men. And she has had a crush on Colin forever, but Colin like recently became aware that he has feelings for her after they shared a kiss. We didn't watch that because the scene is long, so I think we'll cover it. But that's the context here, is they sort of like friends to lovers, but also like sort of forgotten, don't see you that way type of friend turned into a romantic encounter.
I have spent so long trying to feel less, trying to be the kind of man society expects me to be. And for a moment, I thought I had succeeded. But these past few weeks have been full of confounding feelings. Feelings like a total inability to stop thinking about you, about that kiss. Feelings like dreaming of you when I'm asleep, and in fact preferring sleep because that is where I might find you. A feeling that is like torture, but one which I cannot, will not, do not want to give up.
Please, do not say things you do not mean.
But I do mean it. It is everything I have wanted to say to you for weeks.
Colin, we are friends.
Also, again, just really quick, the audio for some of this, most of this might be muted because of the copyrighted music. We'll do our best to work around it, but I also have the subtitles on so that you guys can read this as well.
Yes, maybe.
The devastation on his face.
I do not know what I was thinking.
I'd very much like to be more than friends. So much more.
This man deserves an award for the yearning, the longing in his eyes. I never thought I would like a violin version of a Pitbull song, but here we are. My God. Okay, pause real quick. Two things. First and foremost, I do want to encourage people. Again, we've talked a lot in this video and the last one about how useful it is in building anticipation and tension and all of these things to slow things down. This is advice that I'm gonna stand on until the day I die. And also, for those of us who are uncomfortable with eye contact, this might not be applicable, right? But eye contact and like an intentional pause in between a kiss or something like that can go a long way in helping to do that, right? So especially again, for those of you who are wanting to create or like relight a spark or like create a greater sense of novelty or interest in a sexual encounter with someone that you've been with for a while, incorporating intentional pauses and breaks like this can be a really useful tool in that pursuit. The smiling, I can't take it. I'm probably like a fool just dancing around to music that's not happening right now. I love this for them. I do. Real quick, another PSA. We talked in the last video about Daphne and Simon's interaction where he told her, show me what you want. And I talked about placing your hand over, or having your partner place their hand over yours and asking them to help guide or show you what they're interested in. This is kind of a derivative of that, right? This sort of guiding somebody's hand to where you want it to go is also a great add-in. You don't have to wait for your partner to say this to you. It is also totally valid and useful and like hot to guide your partner's hand where you want it to be. This kind of nonverbal communication can also be really valuable for those of us who struggle with feeling very self-perceptive in sex. You might find yourself feeling very like judgmental about the things that you say, right? Like dirty talk is difficult for a lot of folks for varying reasons. And so if verbalizing that is difficult for you, this is a great way to indicate not only what you're interested in, but also again, to provide a continued check-in about consent and enthusiasm and interest in like moving a sexual encounter forward. So good. This is my favorite moment in the scene, and we're going to talk about why. This right here, the pause and the meaningful eye contact and the nodding, this is my favorite thing. We have talked ad nauseum in these videos about the importance of consent, obviously as a foundational and like necessary component of sex or intimacy, and also a thing that can be like difficult, right? Like herky-jerky for us to voice in a way that doesn't feel like it's an immersion breaker, kind of. This is a great example of what it can look like to incorporate a check-in without having to feel like you're hosting a board meeting and asking for permission or like asking for a status report, right? Meaningful eye contact and waiting for your partner to indicate to you that like, yes, in fact, I am interested in this. And yes, this is okay. Yes, I feel all right is a great way. Obviously, again, I want to encourage people to incorporate verbal consent because it's important, it's necessary, it's part of being sure that your partner is interested in something, and also in the realm of wanting to sort of combat the common, pushback of like, consent feels awkward, or like asking, do you like this feels awkward. This is a great way that is pretty universally agreed upon by the fucking internet. This is hot as hell. And also, again, a great way to incorporate that check-in, and also helps to build that tension and that anticipation like we talked about earlier. And also, again, that we're moving slowly. There's like a good amount of time that has happened between initial like meaningful eye contact and like genital contact, essentially. This scene just goes on and on. And honestly, I love that for them.
Oh, Colin, we're at your house.
Oh God, could the carriage driver not keep on driving?
Okay, before we like close out this scene, again, I just want to be clear that there is a common misconception in media and like, especially, media like this, that sex is always sexy, right? That there's only like moaning and panting and that's it, right? And like, that's not true. The reality is that sex often includes giggles and knowing smiles and moments and short pauses where we're being silly, or just acknowledging that like sometimes bodies make fart noises, right? Sometimes things might not go exactly to plan. Sometimes implements or toys don't fit exactly the way that we had anticipated, and there's like a fumbling and like lots of elbows and all of that kind of stuff. And that's very human. That's very normal. And it does not make sex less sexy or less interesting. In my opinion, this makes sex a much more connecting experience because that's what true vulnerability really looks like, right? So I'm happy that there was a moment at the end of this, even though this does kind of suffer from the like moaning and panting trope. I'm happy that there was a moment at the end of this where we got some levity and some like connectedness between these two people who were like sharing what is admittedly kind of a funny moment. For what it's worth, do practice destigmatizing just being a person in physical, intimate, or sexual encounters, because that's part of, again, what real vulnerability and intimacy looks like. I have seen a couple of spoilers about what is to come in the second half of season 3, so I anticipate that we will have a lot more to talk about. If you guys enjoy these videos, make sure that you like them to let me know that you want to see more of them. If there are things that you specifically want me to discuss, by the way, about Bridgerton or otherwise, you're always welcome to leave them in the comments and request those things, especially if you're able to leave like seasons, episodes, and timestamps. That helps a lot in ensuring that we'll actually talk about those things. So if you have requests or stuff that you want to throw in the ring, please feel free to do that. Otherwise, like the video if you want to like the video. You can subscribe. We do talk about stuff like this, and we talk about pop culture stuff, so I'd love to have you stay for that. And then share the video to help the channel grow and to help each other grow, and I will see you guys next Saturday. Okay, bye.